So what has history taught us since we started our timeline? These are my major takeaways. These are things we didn't know before, and now we do. These truths are not tied to any particular person or set of events. Rather, they are foundational understandings that we can now use to steer us into the future. 1, software flourishes when like-minded people work together for shared reward. 2, hackers love to work on interesting problems and will likely thrive for a little resistance. 3, obvious routes to profit are not the only routes to profit. 4, obvious forms of profit are not the only forms of profit. 5, it is not uncommon for hackers to take an interest in society and social good. 6, the right mix of structure and agility will yield success with motivated volunteer contributors. Not maybe, it will. 7, monetary reward is not the strongest motivator for a hacker. 8, the essence of open source is the process, not the software. 9, but concerning the software, it's really important to get the license right. So thus endeth our historical overview. Now let's identify some key concepts and language of the open source movement. First of all, free, we got to hit that one first. Free means available and unrestricted. It does not mean without monetary cost. You've doubtless heard the meme, free as in speech, not free as in beer. 2 totally different concepts of free. Get the second one out of your head altogether when you're talking about open source. FOSS, free and open source, it's an acronym. It's another widely used acronym that means in practice, as far as I can tell, the same thing as open source. I think purists would prefer that it not be used because of the potential confusion with the word free. Still, it's out there and used quite a bit, so you should understand what it means. A fork. In technical terms, a fork is a complete copy of a code repository. In the open source parlance, it is specifically used to designate the start of a derivative project from a previous project. Copyright, now we're getting into it. The owner of a copyright has the right to dictate the terms of using their creation. Creators own copyrights. A copyright is a legal construct designed to protect the rights of the property creator. Copyrights are relevant in the context of intellectual property, which software is generally considered to be. A license is a form of copyright, a form of a contract in which a copyright owner dictates the terms of use for their property. And the open source definition. This is published by the Open Source Initiative that I previously mentioned that was founded in 1998. This codifies a common understanding of compliance that a project claiming to be open source must adhere to. This is a very quick read, and I encourage you to have a look at it. Maybe 200-300 words. Some important highlights. Free redistribution. An open source project license cannot restrict the licensee from distributing the work, from redistributing the work, or from selling it. And if it's sold, an open source license cannot require royalties to come back in return. An open source project must allow for modification under the same license terms. An open source project must include the source code. An open source project may not discriminate against persons, groups, fields of endeavor, or technology medium. That is, you cannot dictate who uses your code, for what purpose, or on which devices. Let's dig into licenses a little bit more. I keep talking about the importance of licenses. When the Open Source Initiative was founded, there was a major problem with license proliferation. The work done by the OSI to simplify the license landscape is invaluable. License proliferation is a problem because it makes it difficult to choose when so many licenses are redundant. It creates too many traps in which some licenses don't play well with others, and it was seriously scaring the business community off. It was becoming a real problem for open source projects. And it also makes a multi-license distribution all the more difficult to understand. OSI provides a formal review process for proposed open source licenses. They keep a list of open source approved licenses, that is, those that adhere to the open source definition that we just talked about. Currently, there are about 60 of them. If you are starting a new project or doing research for whatever reason, this should be your first stop when it comes to licenses. Do not reinvent the wheel. Okay, unlicensed. It is possible for software to remain unlicensed, but no one will touch unlicensed software because legally, with unlicensed software, an author can assert themselves at any time in the future and apply whatever license they wish to. If you don't explicitly apply a license, you have an unlicensed product, and this is very bad for open source. An open source project cannot be an unlicensed project. A public domain, this is another special type of license in which anyone may use the work for anything, including to restrict derivatives. This is also bad for open source. Counterintuitively, an open source project cannot be in the public domain. Copyleft, this was a fun one. Copyleft is not a legal term, but it's a descriptive term coined by Richard Stallman to describe a license that is engineered to ensure that the property owner's right to give away their property is never inhibited by a downstream release. It turns the whole concept of copyright on its head. A copyleft license is actually less interested in restricting the licensee's freedom than in guaranteeing the author's perpetual freedom to give their stuff away. The only real restriction on the licensee is that the licensee does not turn around and lock anyone else out. The GPL is the original copyleft license. It states that you can do anything you want as long as your redistribution or entire aggregation is also under the GPL. Now, the lesser GPL allows a provision for using an open source work inside an aggregate work that is more restricted on the whole. It does not require, in other words, that all portions of a code base in an aggregate work be under the GPL. This was kind of an important thing for the business community to have access to. Other seminal licenses are the BSD, the MIT, Apache, Mozilla. We do not have time to go into these now, but the major takeaway is if you ever need to dig into them for business or for fun, go to the OSI at opensource.org. Also, I recommend the O'Reilly book on open source software licenses. I have a copy of it back there on the table should you wish to browse. On that point, I brought a few books. They're important seminal writings. Have a look at them if you wish. Even feel free to get up and browse through them while I'm speaking. Just don't walk off with them if you would please not do that.